Hey everybody, Brian Goulet here of GouletPens.com, and it's episode number 227 of Goulet Q&A. I missed you last week. I really did. I'm sure you missed me too, but well, I sort of missed you. I was in Italy, hence the shirt, and yeah, it was really amazing. Rachel and I went for 10 days over to Italy to check out Florence, as well as Naples and Capri and Pompeii, and it was pretty darn cool. I got to be honest with you. We talked about it a lot already in Q&A right now on Monday when Rachel and I got back. So I won't rehash everything, but it was like half the questions in Q&A for this week. So message received. I'll answer a bunch of those, but I'm going to talk about some other stuff too, and that's okay. Do want to drop a quick line in here. If you haven't subscribed to our channel already, definitely should do that because we have lots of good videos coming out pretty constantly, and we got a lot more good ones planned. So be sure to do that. First thing I want to note is that we have a Monteverde ink deal that just started this week. So for any pen that is sold through our distributor Jaffa, who's the one that makes Monteverde, they own Monteverde, we've worked out a special arrangement with them to include a bottle of 90 ml Monteverde ink for any of the pens that they have through the remainder of the year. So that includes Monteverde, Conklin, Stipula, Diplomat, Nettuno, Online, and Peniter. And I had to write them all out because it's hard to recall all those brands for me off the top of my head. So we are going to be giving away a free bottle of ink with any of those pens. We have not increased the price of the pens or anything. So from now through the end of the year, of course, you know, through the holidays and everything, but even before that, you can go and check those out. So lots of good ink colors to choose from and good stuff going on there. One new pen that we have had come out is the Conklin Empire, which is relatively new because we just launched it this week. So I have three colors. I have blue, white, and red, and they are semi-translucent. At least the red and the blue ones are. The white one, not so much. But they're stainless steel nibs. They have Bach nibs on them, at least if you get them through us. And they're magnetic cap. And they post, you know, kind of conventional nib sizes that we have there. But I think it's going to be an interesting pen because it's a very unique shape. And so I think it's going to be appealing for some, and you know, maybe not for everybody, but it's a really good kind of like mid-range pen. So definitely check that one out. I think that'll be interesting for you all. Another new one that we've launched since we last kind of came into our own here. I don't know what that means. Since we came back from, sorry, I'm getting like text notifications and stuff. I'm a little distracted, but anyway. I need to turn all that stuff off when I shoot Q&A. But anyway, so we have Esterbrook as well, the Esterbrook SD. So there's two different sizes of that one and three different colors that I have here, a tortoise blue and a black. And so this is actually a brand that's kind of being revived from Kenro, who are the folks that do Montegrappa and Aurora. And what's really interesting about the oversized one is they also have an option for you to get an adapter that will fit a vintage Esterbrook nib. So Esterbrook's a company that's been around for a very long time. They went away for a while, they got revived, and then went away, and then got revived again. So they have all kinds of Esterbrook nibs and interchangeable nibs, but they actually created a adapter here that's like a separate grip section that will fit the old Esterbrook nibs. So it's a modern pen that will fit an Esterbrook vintage nib, which is pretty interesting. So that's kind of cool. And if those of you know Fountain Pen Day with Carrie, who started Fountain Pen Day, he works at Kenro and has helped to kind of revive this brand. So a pen show person is kind of behind this, so that's neat. So you can check those out on our site. We have those available now. And then what else have we got? We've got the Kaweco. This is the All Sport, and it's called Night Edition. So it's an aluminum pen, cartridge only. But it's all stealthed out, so it's black nib, black trim, and everything. The All Sport, it's a really nice feeling pen. It feels very sturdy. It's a matte black, of course, which is always well received by the people. So you can check that one out if you're interested. We just got that in. I got two other pens to show you here, a little on the fancier end. One of them is Pilot Custom 823 in smoke, which we've been waiting for some time because we've seen it We've seen it over there in Japan, but it's not been available in the US. So this is the US packaging. I don't think it comes like this in Japan with the bottle of ink and everything. But anyway, this is the smoke. So it's a slightly translucent black, basically. And I have my own amber. So you can see here, it's normally a slightly more translucent brown that is, well, they call it amber. It's more of a brown, really. And then they have the smoke, which I'm really, really digging. It's got the gold trim as well. Same nib options and everything, but Custom 823 is, of course, a very popular pen for good reason. Vacuum filling pen, too, also very interesting. So you can check that one out, too. And then the last one that I had to show you, I'm kind of building up to the nicest, craziest one that we have, is the Pelikan M805 Rodin Royal Platinum. So part of what you're paying for is the name. But anyway, it comes in this cool gold box. You kind of lift that thing up. It's got a certificate because it's a numbered limited edition out of 388. It comes in a wooden box, which the packaging on this is just fantastic. Lift that box up. It's got some foam in here, and then it's got the pen just kind of like nestled nicely in here. Of course, this is fantastic looking pen. So they have Rodin stripes. So this is a shell inlay that's laid in strips down the pen, very precisely, might I add. And it looks like solid pieces of shell too, which is just, I mean, it looks fantastic. So I'll show that to you there. And then it's got a lacquer finish on it. So very attractive pen. Big fan of this one. Not cheap, but if you like this style, you know, and if you're a sucker for Rodin, this one should be on your list. Anyway, and the M805 to me is my favorite size of platinum pen. Though I don't have an M1000, I have a feeling that I would like that one if I got my hands on one. That's kind of the one elusive pen that has not made it into my collection yet. But anyway. So yeah, lots of interesting things that have happened here. I should go away more often because lots of good stuff comes in. Oh, there's two more, sorry, actually. Did not finish. So we got the Pilot Vanishing Point crossed lines. This pen is the limited edition Vanishing Point for 2018. Let's see if I can get that to focus there. Ta-da! Hello. Wake up. So this one, they only making 2018 of them, and we have them available right now. It's nothing too crazy on the finish. You know, it's just a black finish with white crossed lines on them. Relatively self-explanatory. I know you might be thinking, if you get a pen like mine is here, like something's wrong, my lines don't line up from top to bottom. We were told that they're not necessarily supposed to. It's going to be random. So some of you might just be like, I cannot, even with this pen. And if that's the case, then you should just return it because they're all going to be random. You might get one that lines up, but that's going to be circumstantial. So if you are find yourself a little OCD and you don't want to have lines that are not lined up, skip out on this one because it's only going to frustrate you. Available medium nib only, and we only have a certain number of them, so once they're gone, they're going to be gone. They haven't flown off the shelf in hours like the ones in years past because it's a relatively conservative pen, and I would not anticipate that it would be as hot and whatnot as ones in years past. So we might have it for a couple of weeks. I don't know. And then we have our fall edition of Edison Nouveau Premier and what is called Galaxia. So this one we leaned away from the fall theme. Normally we kind of like consider at least the season when we're coming up with the material and the naming convention for a given pen. And this one we were like, let's just go off the rails, not even consider the season necessarily for this one. So it's a blue and purple with some black kind of in between flecked material that we think is kind of interesting and a little bit of a departure from some else of what we've done on here. So you can check that one out too. We'll have that one available for the next several months. Now, I will warn you about this. Usually we end up coming out with the winter edition a little bit ahead of schedule, so it might be closer into like the 2-month spectrum for this one. So kind of have it on your radar if you're interested, maybe set some money aside for that. All right, and then also I don't have one physically here to show you, but we have the Field Notes End Papers is the new Field Notes seasonal that's come out. And then Peniter has come out with some pen cases, some leather pen cases, which are kind of nice. I've been carrying one around. I was testing this one here, the 12 case, and I've been carrying around a Visconti 12 case for some time, and I wanted to kind of compare the two. Because they're both Italian leather and they both have a somewhat similar format to them. And the Peniter one did me well on my trip to Italy. It's nice because it's got a very quick access. I like the Visconti one. I've been carrying it for years. I really love both, and they're pretty comparably priced too. The Visconti one's got a zipper. This one's got a flap. Really kind of a personal preference thing. So this one has served me well, and I'm rocking it right now, but you can go and check that out. On our site, we have 3, 6, 12 case. I think that's all of them. It's really hard for me to keep all these straight, trying to catch up after being gone for so long. Anywho, let's talk about some questions for this week, shall we? It's going to be a very Italy themed one this week. I'll just kind of warn you again, but I did mix some other things in here, so let's get to it. All right, some pen and writing questions. This is from Stuart J on Facebook. In your experience, do different cultures or different countries have different attitudes when it comes to fountain pens or writing implements in general? I mean, sure, just like every culture has different perspectives on cars or clothing or food or whatever. There's going to be different cultures that influence how people write things down. There's no question about that. My experience in the fountain pen world, at least, and has been mainly in two areas. It has been either from like manufacturers, like the people that are actually making the products and the culture and how that influences the design of the products. And then social media, because we ship all over the world and we're on social media, so anyone with an internet connection can get involved in our stuff. We're a little bit skewed there because we only speak English on our team, so most of the countries who were interacting with online, it's going to be heavily influenced by kind of the English-speaking culture. So we're going to be missing some of the perspective of countries where English is not the predominant language, or at least even a predominant secondary or tertiary language. So the ones that I've found in terms of manufacturers of where they tend to settle is, the manufacturers and suppliers tend to be more concentrated in areas where fountain pens are more a part of their culture. Places like Italy, Japan, Germany, France, China, India, Taiwan, the UK. Those are still have fountain pens more in their culture, or at least in their recent memory of their culture. So that's where more of the manufacturers are going to be coming from. But social media is kind of all over the place. In some countries, writing is more rooted in the culture, and it's more of a tradition. There's a romance, there's a craftsmanship related to that, especially those countries where the manufacturing is coming from. Other countries, it's purely just kind of utility and function. So, others like in the US, it's a little more like curiosity or status or a niche, kind of a hobby kind of thing. So it's just interesting to see. I don't want to make like broad generalizations about a given country or a given region, but no matter what country, everyone's facing changes in the utility of writing instruments and the change of technology and how that's affecting not just fountain pens, but really all writing implements, since you kind of posed the question that way. So there's kind of global shifts happening in the world of writing in general that's sure to have a lasting impact on just society in general. But I found that pure utility-driven interest is going down for the most part. Just people who just need a stick to write things down. They don't look at a pen any more than this is an implement to accomplish a task. There's no desire or draw to actually using that. It's purely just to accomplish a purpose. That I think is going down thanks to things like texting and video and voice and more automated means of communication. But other niches like fountain pens are actually seeing an increase because it's very passion driven. There's social media and sharing and education, like this kind of thing, has actually helped to kind of drive that up a little bit. So it is interesting to see, and especially just coming off my trip to Italy, like seeing places like Florence where it's such an influence of the Renaissance, and there's deep history there of buildings that are 500 500, 700, 1,000 years old are just around everywhere. And here in the US, it's like, we're lucky if we have a building that's 150 years old, you know? And just an interesting perspective that there is, having such rich history, but also such rapid technology change and how that's maybe impacting things. So it's going to impact every culture a little bit differently, but it is certainly something that's interesting, and I'm keeping my eye on it. But the thing that I've always loved about the fountain pen community in general is it's not been completely regional specific. It's really been, because of the internet, it's allowed anybody who's had kind of a general interest in writing or in pens to have access to materials or access to education or knowledge or a community online, whereas, you know, it wouldn't have been an option, you know, if you don't live in an area where there's a stationery store in every corner. You know, how else would you get exposed to pens, and how else would you be able to dive into your passion like this, other than what technology has provided? So it's very much this yin and yang kind of controversy thing going on, you know, paradox, pulling on both ends with the technology and fountain pens. But I've always loved kind of walking that line. I find it to be one of the most interesting things about this hobby and this point in time where we are with it. Cool. All right, this is from Please Artiste on Instagram. Artiste. With all the nib options that are currently being produced, extra fine, fine, medium, stub, flex, do you think there will be another regularly offered nib option that doesn't have to be a custom grind? So I'm thinking about things like you know, cursive italics or architect grinds, or, you know, really extra fine nibs, you know, things like that, that I know that are more regularly done. You know, there's nothing that I really see on the horizon right now. Nothing from manufacturers that I'm talking to that's like, there's this one nib size that's in crazy demand that, you know, is able to be manufactured regularly, that we should really push for. I think flex nibs has been that thing for the last 6 or 7 years. You know, it's interesting. There's a niche interest in fountain pens, so there is some innovation that's happening, but it's not as rapid of a pace as, say, electronics or computing, right? So you're not going to see brand new conceptual things coming out every year, because things are just going to move a little bit slower in a niche like this. So, you know, there's been some advances of nib work, but largely most of the nib technology's kind of been figured out over the last 150 years. So a lot of what's happening is companies are looking back towards what's happened in the last 60, 80, 100 years with nib technology and nib grinds and things like that to see, you know, how they can offer new and unique things. It's actually kind of looking to the past to move forward in the future, which is an interesting place to be. So, you know, there's nothing that I've talked to any manufacturer that's like, oh yes, we definitely need to move in this direction. I think flex is a very general term because that could mean a lot of different things depending on nib size and stuff like that. Flex has been the thing that's kind of still in the works at a lot of pen companies, that more and more is coming out. And it seems to still be fairly popular. So I think that's the one right now. You know, it's interesting that you put that in as nib options that are currently being produced. I would say the flex is still playing out as the newer nib option that's becoming available, because really before the Noodler's pens came out, it was hard to get anything that had any real flex to it, especially something that was like accessible to the masses, you know what I mean? But I would say that, you know, maybe what I would like to see is more stub options, because stub is kind of an underdog kind of nib. It's something that even with some of the older manufacturers, they're like, really? Stubs are more popular, especially in the US. It's like, yeah, it's usually like extra fine stub, then fine, flex is in there somewhere, then medium, then broad is kind of like on the tail end of that. It's not like medium nib is number one like it has been for a long time, especially in Europe. But it's shifted a little bit. I think stub is kind of up and coming more popular, especially as people want to have like more of a calligraphic kind of look to their writing. So I could see an expansion of maybe stub options, and that's something that I'm talking to a lot of manufacturers, being like, hey, can you expand your stub, especially on the finer stubs? Maybe go with a cursive italic, like a medium cursive italic would be pretty cool to offer, something in the 0.7, 0.8 millimeter range, as opposed to having like a 1.1 millimeter stub being the smallest one. Maybe going a little finer than that could be interesting, but you know, we'll have to see how that kind of plays out. But, you know, there's basically more than what's currently being offered in like this extra fine to 1.1, 1.5, maybe a flex. You get into some pretty hefty handwork that's involved that gets difficult to mass produce. So I don't know if there's anything that's like imminent on the horizon, but, you know, I'll keep asking for it for sure. All right. I got a couple of business questions here. One is from Tank Cruisin' on Twitter. What effect, if any, does Inktober have on the Goulet Pen Company? So Inktober is a hashtag that's out there, and you can check out inktober.com, their website. So mad props to, oh gosh, I'm failing to recall the name. I'm going to look it up right now because, oh, here we go. Inktober, Jake Parker. That's who it is. I wanted to say James, but Jake, I don't know Jake Parker personally, but if you look at his website, it is inktober.com. You can learn all about Inktober and how it came about. It was started in 2009. Basically, it's 31 days with 31 drawings. So I think it was kind of inspired in the art community, not necessarily the fountain pen community. You can certainly use fountain pens, but a lot of people use, you know, other types of pens too, and pencils and all kinds of stuff. So it's basically a challenge to write or to draw something using ink for 31 days straight. So you draw different caricatures or different, you know, doodles or something like that for the month of October. And that's kind of what it is. And there's a hashtag Inktober or Inktober 2018 or whatever, and you can kind of check out what everybody's doing. So it's just a nice little social program and all that. We haven't done a whole lot. We're not like officially affiliated with it or anything like that, but we, at least as a media team, we are participating in it. Not every single day, but we're going to be doing just a short video and posting maybe on Instagram of just one thing a week that we're going to do. So we'll have like 5 different postings throughout the month of October. So we're going to kind of dabble and maybe promote it a little bit, really just as a way to like have something interesting to do with your pens. We think anything there is really cool to do. So you can check that out if you're interested. As far as your question of, you know, what effect or impact does it have on Goulet pens? You know, I don't really know. It's not like we get bombarded with artists every October. You know, I'm sure there's maybe some fringe effect that we get, or it's just something interesting that happens in the community. You know, we don't, because we're not like giving a sponsored like coupon or discount or something that we can like, you know, tag and track and you know, you keep track of like what kind of impact it could have on our sales and all that kind of stuff. I really don't have a clue other than just kind of a general sense of engaging with the community and seeing, you know, who's talking about it and what of our customers are maybe kind of involved on social media and stuff like that. So, you know, I'm sure that there's people that kind of get amped about ink and maybe want to shop with us, but, you know, I don't have a really way to track it or to know. So I get a general sense like, yes, it's something exciting, people get involved, but it's not like, you know, Inktober is something that really just dominates our life, you know, or anything like that. But it is really cool. And again, it sprung up from the artist community, not necessarily like from within the fountain pen community. It's not like Fountain Pen Day, you know, that's much more of a thing for us, you know, because that's one day, came up from within the pen community and all that. So, you know, that's more of a thing for us. But it's still something really fun. So, you know, we're participating this year. So, next question I have is from Martijn K on Facebook. Are there any special plans for the company's 10th anniversary next year, and can you shine some light on them? So, you know, you are thinking way further ahead than I am, quite honestly. So technically, we consider our anniversary of Goulet Pens to be November 17th, 2009. That was when we received our first shipment of retailable fountain pen goods. You know, we were making pens and doing stuff for like 3 years before that, but that was really what we consider to be when the company in its current form started. So that's, we just pegged that and said that's going to be our anniversary. So that, we haven't even hit 9 years yet. We're not quite there. So 10 years, I'm like, I can only think 1 year at a time, maximum. More like 3 days at a time. But you know, you kind of got me thinking a little bit. I was like, you know, there's a lot of companies that hit their anniversary. Pilot hit 100 years this year. Platinum is going to hit 100 years next year. Visconti is going to hit 30 years next year. Aurora is going to hit 100 years. And so I'm like, you know, there's some big milestones out there that people are doing stuff. I'm like, 10 years is like, you know, 10 years is pretty, in some ways it's like, it feels like nothing, you know, when you're looking at a company like Pilot that's hit 100. And then in other ways, I'm like, man, 10 years really is pretty cool. Like, especially when you consider small business started in our house kind of thing. It's pretty rad to hit 10 years. So like, maybe we should do something. I don't know. So I'll be completely honest and just say, I wanted to put this question out there just to solicit ideas more than anything else, because I don't really have a clue. You know, we talked about like maybe doing some kind of, you know, limited edition pen or ink or something, or do a video or a video series. I don't really know. It's certainly something I can start thinking about with my team, but I don't really have anything to like start hyping up 14 months in advance before it actually comes. But, you know, it'd be interesting to celebrate in some way. All that preface to say, I'm usually really bad at celebrating anniversaries and milestones and stuff, and I apologize to my team. This is why I have a team of people that are more on top of that kind of stuff than I am, because I forget my own birthday sometimes if I'm not like really on top of things. It's just not like on my radar. And growing up when I was a kid, like we would celebrate birthdays and all that, but it wasn't like craziness that would happen around those. So it's just something that like is not as much on my radar than like, oh yeah, 10 years coming up, that's pretty cool. And then it's like, boop, moving on. But I know it's a bigger deal for other people, and it's worth celebrating. So we'll talk about that as a team, and I'd love to kind of ask you for some ideas in the comments if you want to leave any. That'd be really cool, and then you'll have forgotten about them, but we'll write them down, and then we'll do them, and you'll be like, oh yeah, that is a cool idea. But you won't even remember that you told us that we should do it, and we'll be like, yeah, you told us. I don't know if we'll do that, but anyway. Okay, moving on. Personal questions, pens and puppers on Instagram. I think I have personal questions the rest of this thing, yeah. All right, we're halfway through this thing, don't worry, we're getting there. So this is pens and puppers on Instagram. What was the most surprising fact you learned from your trip to Italy? About pens or otherwise, even art, etc. I loved all the pictures of the cathedrals, by the way, absolutely stunning. Yeah, definitely like, I think, you know, I could go on this, and to be quite honest with you, I've barely even started to like process the trip, because we did so much kind of back to back, and everything that we did was like mind-blowing and really impressive. Just the scale of the buildings and the magnitude of the craftsmanship and the artistry and the history and the Renaissance and all that kind of stuff that happened there was just like, wow. You know, that's one of the biggest impressions that we as Americans have when we go to Europe, is just the sense of history and culture that's there, that is just so much older and richer than what we have here in America. We have a lot of great things in America. We got a lot of stuff. We have a lot of, you know, action and activity and freedom and entrepreneurship and all that really excitement and pop culture and stuff like that. But we don't have, you know, 1,000 years of deep history that we can walk around and see physically. And that's pretty mind-blowing as an American going over to Europe to see, especially a place like Florence and Naples. So that definitely really, wow, set me back a little bit. In a good way. You know, going to Florence, especially kicking off the trip with that. So we went to Florence and spent like 4 days there, and then we traveled and took the train to Naples and spent time in Naples and Capri and Pompeii. And, you know, just seeing, you know, some of the Renaissance influence that happened in Florence was really cool, and I have a craftsman's heart, like I really do. That's how the whole pen thing started for me. And so seeing the statues, you know, just lining the city, and, you know, going and seeing Michelangelo's work, and seeing the David, and going to the Uffizi Museum, and seeing just all the fine art and craftsmanship, it was like, I could barely like emotionally handle it, quite honestly. Like, and I'm not like a super like emotional guy, but like that kind of stuff, that craftsmanship, just seeing like people that dedicated their lives and had a craft and skill and worked and honed it and was influenced by the whole community and what was happening in the Renaissance at that time. Like, I read about that stuff in history books and whatnot, but then seeing it in person and like being like this far from, you know, Michelangelo's statues that he carved, and like seeing the very like carvings and the strokes that he made on those was just like, whoa, it like blew my mind. And to the point where I was like welling up with like tears in my eyes, surrounded by all these other people, and I'm like, I don't even care if I look like a fool right now, like I just got to take this in. But then it was like, boom, we had to go to the next thing, and I could like barely like process it, and we were moving through the Uffizi and all that kind of stuff. So I think, the most surprising fact that I learned, if I have to kind of sum it all up, was just the sense of history and culture and how abundant that was. And then really just seeing how different the culture was, even from just like one city to another. Like we went from Florence and we went to Siena, and just seeing like Florence was super influenced by the Renaissance, but then like Siena, which is really not that far away from Florence, was much more Baroque period, and just how different all the buildings looked and the art that was there and the layout of the city and all that. And it was a smaller city, and just like getting a sense of like it's not that far away, but it's really like a whole different area. And then Naples was completely different, and just talking to native Italians who were there, and they're like, yeah, Italy's really like 3 different countries. You got like northern, central, and southern, and it's like almost completely different. And so just learning about their history and the culture, and just like how different the culture is. And this is really kind of throughout Europe, right? Like how different the culture is as you travel really not that far. And everybody speaks multiple languages and all this kind of stuff. And in America, it's like you can drive for literally days and largely experience a very similar culture to what you came from. It's like you might have a slightly different accent, or they might call it pop instead of soda, or something like that, but it's not nearly as drastic as what you have going through Europe. So that was, and I knew about that and I heard about that, but seeing that and experiencing that for myself was really something. So that was probably my biggest takeaway, is like, not about a pen thing necessarily, but that's more on like the culture side and the personal side. And then related more to pens, I guess, I'll give you a twofer on this question. It was, the pen thing was really about passion and craftsmanship and romance. So just seeing like specifically the manufacturers that I visited with Peniter and Stipula and Nettuno, it's very, very passion driven, very capable, very intelligent people, very experienced people behind all those companies. And really the theme behind all of them and the people who are partners with the experienced pen people in those companies, it was like, yeah, we could make more money doing something else. There's no question about that. Pens is not like the biggest money-making venture you can do, especially as a manufacturer. But they were like, we absolutely love it, and we have to do it. We feel compelled to do it. Just like a painter who paints, or a sculptor who sculpts, or a musician who musicians. You like that? But I'm a musician, so I can make fun of musicians. But so a musician who plays music, you have to just appreciate that that's what's there. And I think there's a common thread throughout really the whole pen world of we're all here because we want to be and because we love it. And there's a passion that's shared throughout all of that. I very much got that sense. And Italy especially is a very passionate people and a culture of romance and all that. And I got that sense and understand it to a deeper degree even than I did before. So that really like solidified that for me. It was a very cool experience. All right, next question is from Mary C on Facebook. How did Rachel do with the travel? She was in my thoughts, and since I am the same way. Got a lot of support from you all. Those of you who have been following, especially on Q&A, if you're watching episode 220, I don't know why I looked at my watch. If you're watching episode 227, this may be your first Q&A video, but probably a lot of you watching, you're tuning in every week or maybe every so often. You just kind of see what we're up to. And thank you. I'm very, very honored by that. I really am, as is my whole team. So a lot of you know that Rachel has had some anxieties before, specifically related to travel anxiety and things like that. And it has been an experience for the two of us to go through that. Really, it's the last kind of 4 years she's been kind of, she's recognized the anxiety and it's kind of gotten worse. And then she went through kind of a rough patch and then has been working really in the last year and a half, 2 years to really kind of overcome that through counseling, through dietary changes and doctor visits and all these types of things to really identify some of that. And she's really worked hard. And so we knew this would be a big test for her and just so many things that could potentially trigger her anxiety. But she just was such a trooper. I mean, she was so phenomenal. And I'm not going to like overhype it or anything like that, but she really tried to involve herself in a lot. I thought, not just like pushing herself to go through everything, because one thing with anxiety is you're not always pushing and pushing and pushing, because then you crash. But it's finding that balance between, okay, I have some anxiety, I know when to push and I know when it's too much. She did a really good job of balancing all that. And for any of you who've either experienced anxieties for yourself or have have someone very close to you who you have to support and navigate that with, it can be a real challenge sometimes to understand, okay, the anxiety is getting a hold of me and it's holding me back from what I want to do, versus, okay, I'm experiencing anxiety, but I have to walk with it and carry it with me and still experience the things I want to do. So that was, I think, the biggest takeaway for Rachel for this trip was she was able to experience a lot of what she wanted to. She did kind of push herself a little bit at times, just as we all do. But she also did a good job of saying, no, I'm going to stop eating this food because I don't want to upset my stomach, or no, I'm gonna sit out on this thing because I would need time to rest and recoup. She did a really good job of that. So I was very proud of her. I'm not as disciplined even as she is in that way. I was like, give me all the food. I want to experience all the things. I want to go. And not much more I push myself till I crash. But I don't experience anxiety in the same way. So I haven't had to kind of go through that. So, she did a great job. For anybody that you were thinking about her, praying for her, it really, really worked. And it was very helpful. So thank you so much for thinking about her. She's just awesome and the best, and I love her. We got to have a great, memorable experience together, not just as business partners, but as a married couple. We were like thinking about, ever since we were in our late teens, we were thinking about, one day maybe going to Europe together. And it's like to have pens be the catalyst for us to be able to actually accomplish that was just like, wow, the gratitude and appreciation that we feel for even being able to experience a trip like this was just almost overwhelming. So if you are experiencing any anxiety for yourself, or you know anybody who's gone through that, I know from having walked with Rachel on that it can feel like it never ends, or it can feel like, okay, this thing is going to rule my life and I'll never be able the same again. I can say Rachel is kind of a success story of you can still, it never really goes away, but you can walk with it, and you can still get to live your life and experience a lot of things, even with having kind of that struggle and something to balance all the time. So she's great. All right. This next question is from darcieglam on Instagram. What was your favorite meal? Last time I was in Italy, I bought all the things and had gelato every day. Well, I'll one-up you on that. I had gelato multiple times a day on many of the days there, hence why I'm about 7 pounds heavier, and that's okay, because now I'm like, all right, biking every day, let's get back on it, Brian. I put on a little bit of weight, but that's okay, and I knew it, and I was like, I'm going to put on weight, and then that's just going to help me remember the trip afterwards, I guess. But anyway, I love food, and I have a sweet tooth, so I was like, when else am I going to go overboard? Okay, let's do it here. So just about every meal we had there was really, really good. They know how to eat over there, and it's all very like local and very, it's not you walk down the street and it's not like America where there's like a hot dog stand and a Chinese food restaurant and a fast food place and it wasn't like that at all. It was like, it was local restaurants. A lot of them I hardly saw any chains. Even in like the hearts of the city, it was like maybe there was a McDonald's or something like that. I think that might have been one of the only chains that I recognized there anyway. There may be local chains that I didn't know that they were chains, but largely it's just way less commercialized than what we have here in the U.S. So yeah, it was pretty interesting. The food was really good. A lot of the places that we went were like family restaurants, and like friends of the manufacturers that we were visiting like owned those restaurants and had family things, and like the olive oil was pressed from their villa in Tuscany and all that kind of stuff, and it was just like, wow, really, really, really cool. So some of the standout for me was in Naples, actually. They have fresh buffalo mozzarella, and if you've ever been to the Amalfi Coast or anything in that region, you know what I'm talking about. Their mozzarella is fantastic. And I'm a huge lover of cheese. I'm of French descent, so like cheese is like in my DNA. And man, it was so good. Like the last full day that we were there, we got a special restaurant from the guy who started Nessuno, Nino, and he had a friend of his who has a popular restaurant where they specialize in seafood and fresh mozzarella. So we had like 2 hours old, fresh, huge ball of buffalo mozzarella where you like cut it and like the milk just like poured out. Oh, so good. I'm just dying thinking about it. But anyway, so that was basically an entire meal for us. It was mozzarella with some bread and stuff like that. It was so good. Oh my gosh. We had really good pizza. The caprese salads, like the tomatoes over there, taste incredible, and mozzarella, and just, of course, good salad stuff. So like having like bruschetta and and caprese was like the best. There's lots of good meat and bread and stuff like that, which normally I'm good, but I actually kind of, like, we kind of overdid it on the steaks in Florence. Like, they're really known for T-bone steak, like Florentine steak, and they cook it very, very rare as well, which is really good and amazing experience. But after like a couple of days of that, I was like, all right, I'm good on steak. I normally don't do a ton of steak, but like the fresh, like caprese mozzarella kind of thing, I was like, I could eat this all the time. So I am very much into the Mediterranean food. And then of course gelato for days, literally gelato for days. I could eat that. Oh, it was so good. I think that's where a lot of this came from. But they had a Nutella flavored. I think it's one of the greatest things that God's put on this great green earth. And putting that and combining the Nutella into gelato was just like over the top for me. I just loved it. So all good stuff. I would go back in a heartbeat and eat all the things and stuff myself completely. If I lived over there, I would probably weigh 500 pounds because I would not be able to stop eating. I would probably get sick of some things, maybe eventually, but man, as a tourist there, I really never got sick of the food. It was really good. And prosciutto as well. Oh man, so good, so good. I overdid it on the prosciutto though. I had it like multiple meals a day kind of thing, and by like 6 days of that, I was like, all right, I can take a little break from that. But it was really good. All right, so that's it for Italy. I got one more question for you for this week. So this is from Kimberly G on Facebook. What is one of your biggest pet peeves you've seen someone do to a fountain pen? Well, this will be a quick answer because it happens all the time. Whenever you hand a pen to somebody that doesn't know pens, even some people that know pens but just aren't really thinking about it, there's a tendency that everybody has to yank a cap off a pen. Because I think just because of ballpoints and roller balls and stuff like that, we're so used to just having a pen with a cap that you pull off that it's like instinctual for a lot of people that don't have experience with fountain pens to just yank on a pen cap. And as you all know, who've been involved in fountain pens for a little bit, there's a lot of threaded caps. And that's probably just as common, if not more common, than magnetic caps or snap caps or anything like that. So it always breaks my heart when I see some, where it's like a resin pen that's, durable but not indestructible, where somebody takes it and they just yank on it, and there might be like a threaded insert that they just rip out of the pen, or maybe they crack the threads because they're just going like that. I've had a couple of people do that with pens in front of me over the years. I haven't lost any like serious pens that I love due to that happening, but there are definitely times, and some of you probably know what I'm talking about. There's times when you have people that, like Twisby, for example, it looks like you could just yank the cap off. But you rip the threads on that thing and you could strip them, you can really do some damage to the pen. And it's not like it's the end of the world for that particular pen, but it's just like somebody goes to pull on it and they're like, what's wrong with the pen? And you're like, don't do that. So that's one of my biggest pet peeves is this, when somebody has a pen that they know is kind of a nicer pen, you hand it to them and they don't really know, and so their inclination is to yank harder as opposed to like, oh, am I doing something wrong? Yeah, twist it, or just doing something like that. So that would be my pet peeve, and that's where I'll leave it. That'll be it for this week. A little bit shorter Q&A this week. I really kind of barreled through. So anyway, my question of the week this week is, what is your biggest pen peeve? Pen pet peeve? Do you have any in particular? I would love to hear about that in the comments. And my writing prompt for you, this is for anyone who is looking for an excuse to write with their pen. I will give you one. This is to, this little bit of practice, a little bit of torture maybe. Write your least favorite word in cursive 25 times. So take your least favorite word. My personal least favorite word is community. And it's hard because I write that word fairly often. There's so many humps and loops and all that, between the U's and the M's and the N's and all that, honestly, half the time when I write community, I lose track of how many humps I'm doing, and it just ends up being like C-O-M-T-Y. And you can't even tell what's going on in there, and then I dot something in the middle there for the I. Yeah, it's pretty funny. Anyway, so I guess that's what I'll have to do. I haven't been doing a lot of my own writing prompts, actually. I've been saying them to you, but I haven't necessarily been doing them all the time. Maybe I'll write the word community 25 times, and then you all can know that I'm legit and not just talking. I'm actually walking my walk. Anyway, I do write with my pens regularly though, so I don't necessarily need a prompt. But anyway, if you need one, it's there for you. I hope you've had a great couple of weeks now, and I hope you have a great rest of your week. You can find a lot of the stuff I talked about here on gouletpens.com. Be sure to ask us any questions in the comments if you have any, and subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks so much for watching, and